Okay, so welcome to today's forum. So I'd like to just, as I mentioned, we probably haven't got time to get everyone to do introductions, but I'd just like, and we've got a few newcomers, so I'd like to give them a chance. If you do have something that you'd like to say or announce, put it in the chat, and then we'll pick that up at the end, so that, you know, if you've got a particular announcement, you get a chance to do it. So can I just ask Lawrence, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name's Lawrence Swan and I work for the Learning Disability Network London, formerly the Westminster Society. We just started working in Camden in January. We have got 12 settings in January and support roughly 80 people with learning disabilities in Camden. And yes, I haven't set foot in the borough yet. It's all been virtual, so it's a bit strange, but yeah, everyone's made me feel very welcome. Hi.
Great, thank you. Arvinder, please introduce yourself and welcome. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you at the moment.
Is that better?
Yes, that's fine.
Arvinder Gohil, I'm Chief Executive of Central YMCA. I have been in my role for 18 months. Really delighted to have met Kevin last week and to be part of this forum. Some of you will know my colleague Sally Ann Smith, who has been attending these meetings in the past.
Great, okay. And I know Rosa was down to come. I don't know if you're here. And this is always the problem with sharing screen. I suddenly can't see who's here. So let me just stop sharing the screen for a second. So if anyone else is new, if you just want to indicate, John, why don't you introduce yourself? I know you've not been around for a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've come to one of these meetings. And yes, so I'm John Brame. I manage the volunteering service at Students' Union UCL, so at University College London. Some of you may have met my colleague Oliver Peachy, who's our partnerships manager. So nice to see you all.
Great. Anyone else new who'd like to introduce themselves? Just wave your hand or shout. No, okay. Let me just, right, so I'm going to hand over to Ruth. So Ruth, I know you talked last time, but this is another opportunity to let people know about the UCL exchange. So over to you.
Hi, Kevin. I'm sorry, I have some drilling here. Would you like me to speak now?
Do you want, should I leave it for a little bit?
Let's do it now and see how we go.
Yes,
Sorry.
I can't hear anything, so I think
okay, good.
Okay,
yeah. So thank you, Kevin, and each of you for letting me join today, and forgive me if you hear some strange noises coming from the background. It's the house next door having some work done. Since I was here last, some of you may have come to our last event, and I'm here today to talk about our next event. So the Evaluation Exchange is an opportunity for organisations in Camden who might be struggling to evaluate their work. And we offer support from UCL researchers to find solutions. So we match teams of PhD students to organisations to help solve a challenge in evaluating or learning that the organisation has identified. Our next iteration will start in October, and students will be working 1 day a week with their organisation for 6 months, so from October to March next year. and VAC will be helping us with that, as well as related training sessions that we'll have on evaluation for the organisations that are involved. So if you feel that you need help with evaluation and learning, and you think that this might be an opportunity that you're interested in, then we are holding an event on the 29th of April at 11:30, and you can find out more. We'll be talking more about what the evaluation exchange is and what it involves, and you can hear from an organisation that was involved in our pilot programme. And we'll also have an activity that's looking at organisations' evaluation challenges, thinking about potential solutions and the feasibility of solving it with students, and really thinking through whether it might be something you want to put forward an application for to join the evaluation exchange when our applications open in May. So if you're interested at all in finding out more, then please join us on the 29th of April. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me via that email address on the slide. And I'll also put the event link in the chat.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Ruth. And so, yes, that's and we'll also put the link, it'll be in the on our website with everything from today. We'll have that up by Friday. So yes, that's the thing to go to if you're interested, 29th of April.
Thanks, Kevin.
Put that diary. Okay, let me just, so back to the program, and Nicholas, you are up next. Now, I think that you should be able to share your screen. Yep, that looks good.
Have you got it? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can do anything to get rid of some of these things. Okay.
I think the little projector screen icon is the makes it bigger.
Where is that, Kevin?
Right down at the bottom, next to
Down at the bottom, projector screen.
you're almost there. Yes, that the one to the left. That one, yeah.
This one.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. So is that better, Kevin? Kevin, can you see that? Because obviously I don't know.
I can see it. It's still the same, but I think we can see it okay.
Yeah, because I'm having difficulty removing this window at the top. So, okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Nicholas. I'm one of the funding officers at the National Lottery Community Fund, and I look after Camden. So I'm just going to talk a little bit to you about what is on offer from the National Lottery Community Fund. I might go through this quite quickly, and obviously I can share these slides with you at the end. I'll send them to Kevin, and then he can share them around, and then maybe it's more beneficial just to kind of ask some questions at the end. So my washing machine has just decided to go into spin cycle, if you can hear it. Right, and I can't seem to get right. I'm having a few technical issues here, Kevin. So you might have to.
Okay, let me see if I can do it, Nicholas. That might be easier.
Is that? Have you got it there? Is that better?
Oh, okay.
Can you see it now, Kevin?
I just think
Sorry, Nicholas, do you want to just try again?
Have you got it now?
Yes, that looks fine.
Okay, so these are just kind of the things I'll run through, just a little bit of an introduction about us, our purpose and priorities, what our funding offer is, and who and what we can fund, and how to apply. So just a little bit about the National Lottery Community Fund. So National Lottery Community, the National Lottery players contribute around 30 million to good causes every week. And we distribute around 600 million a year to communities across the UK. And also in 2020, we distributed over 200 million through emergency funding in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Our purpose is to support people and communities to thrive. We want to support ideas and activities that matter to people and communities. We use our funding and relationships to help create stronger, more connected communities. And we support charities and community organisations across the UK to be vibrant, diverse and active. Our kind of overarching vision is people in the lead. So we're looking for kind of organisations that are very much ensuring that people you work with are meaningfully involved in the development, design and delivery of your work. It's strength-based, supporting people and communities to build on their knowledge, skills and experience, and that is connected. That means giving a good demonstration of a good understanding of other activities and services in the community that show how your proposal will complement these. We have kind of three kind of funding priorities in England, and these are kind of stronger relationships. So this is building stronger and strengthening relationships in and across communities, shared and sustainable places and spaces. So we support people to shape and sustain the places that matter to them. So that could be a park, a community centre, or it could even be an online network. And we also have a priority of early action, and that's to prevent problems and tackle disadvantage. And that's looking at working with things at the earliest possible stage. So our priorities in response to the pandemic. So we'll continue to support people and communities most adversely impacted by COVID-19. And we want to do more than support organisations to survive. We want to support organisations to thrive and grow. So just basically looking at our funding offer, which you can find on our website, we have National Lottery Awards for All, Reaching Communities and Partnerships. All applications ideally should go through the website unless you have specific communication requirements. I'll just touch on Awards for All. It's not a kind of funding stream that we look after. We just look after Reaching Communities as funding officers. So National Lottery Awards for All is grants from £300 up to £10,000 for 1 year. You can apply at any time, but only have one award in any 12 months. Applications are online using a response to one question, and a decision is typically within 12 weeks. Then we have our larger offer, which is Reaching Communities and Partnerships. So with this, we can fund individual organisations or partnerships, and these can be grants from £10,000 and £1 or more, running for up to 5 years. And again, you can apply at any time, and applications are online with other formats available. We can fund direct costs, project-related costs, organisational development, core and fixed costs, and we can also fund capital costs. There's just a little bit here about who can apply. Organisations who can apply are voluntary or community organisations, registered charities, constituted groups or clubs, not-for-profit company, or a CIC. There's a little bit here about who we can't accept applications from. So that's individuals or sole traders, companies that pay profits to directors, shareholders or members, organisations based outside the UK, and organisations that don't have at least 2 trustees who aren't married, in a civil partnership, long-term relationship, and living at the same address or related by blood, or one organisation applying on behalf of another. So you can apply by visiting our website and check your eligibility and apply online. Following that, this is about the application process. You will receive either an unsuccessful email from us or a request for extra information. You submit the extra information and you may possibly meet with your funding officer if needed, or have a phone call. And then once we have enough information from you, we will confirm that you are happy with your full proposal and await a decision. When you are applying, what you'll be asked for at the beginning are these kind of areas: what your organisation does, what you'd like to do, where your work will take place, how you involve your community, how your work fits with local activities, who will benefit and what difference you'll make, how much money you need and what you'll spend it on, and how long the money is for. I don't know if people are familiar with reaching communities, but we have kind of changed our application sort of process a little bit. We're asking for a little bit more information at the beginning now, whereas before we were just asking for people to just share their idea with us. We are just gathering a little bit more information at the beginning, so it's easier for us to make a decision more quickly. So if your application is eligible and fits with our priorities, we will ask for more information from you. So we'll ask for more detail about your proposal, what the proposed budget is. We'll ask you about an overview of your organization's financial position, and we'll ask you for a recent bank statement. If you are successful, you will be sent a grant offer letter and be asked to start your grant within 6 months. And then we will support you throughout the life of your grant with monitoring, and that's generally done at the end of the year and at the end of the project, with check-ins regularly to see how you're doing. There is more information available on our website. A lot of what I've kind of just spoken about now is available there, and as I said, I will share the slides. You can actually email us at the London and South East team, which the details are there. You can also call our advice line as well if you have any questions. I know I rattled through that quite quickly, but I thought it might be kind of more valuable if anybody has any questions, please do ask.
Great. Thanks then, Nicholas. That was really useful. And whilst we see if anyone's got any questions, maybe I can abuse my position and dive in with the first one. So I like the two-stage process where you've got this initial the initial stage. Obviously that makes people that aren't having to spend all the time doing a huge application to find that it's along the wrong lines. Do they get much feedback? I mean, if it doesn't fit, then do you sort of get feedback at that stage, and can you then just go back and sort of act on that feedback and go back?
Yes, we will give people feedback. What I'd say is that yes, following the feedback, you can come in again, but obviously taking into consideration the feedback, we want to see that has been listened to.
Sure. Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Nicholas, and then I can see people and see if anyone's got a hand up or anything.
Can you tell me how to stop?
At the top, along that, there's like a green bar and then a red.
Yeah. There we go.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much. That was really useful, Nicholas. Now I can see Arvinder's got a hand up. So Arvinder, fire away.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Nicholas. That was really helpful. Just wondered whether there was a particular funding stream for organisations that are required to recover from the last 12 months in all its forms, the financial recovery, the reaching out recovery as well, in terms of getting people to re-engage and the anxieties around that.
Yeah, and I think that's very much about us still wanting to support communities that have been adversely impacted by COVID-19. So yes, that could be part of the recovery process. And I think the good thing about reaching communities, it's flexible funding, as in time-wise. So that might just be 6 months of funding that people need. So you can also apply for 6 months. It doesn't have to be funding done by multiple years or years. It could be 6 months, it could be 18 months. So there's real flexibility around that. And we know there's a real need for it.
Thank you.
Just going back to what you were saying, Kevin, there's just something I wanted to add about when you said we give people feedback. We may also give you feedback to say it's probably not appropriate to reapply at this moment. You might have to wait for a bit longer and go away and do some more work. You're on mute, Kevin.
Oh, well, I'll get this right one day. Yeah, no, I think the important thing is they do get feedback. I think that's really, you know, it's really helpful to know what is your next step. So that's really useful to know, actually. Okay, I'm looking around. I don't see any other hands or so it sounds like that's it for now, but we will put that we'll put the presentation up on the website with everything else for today. And I know Nicholas makes himself available. He covers Camden and Barnet, so knows the borough well. So yeah, Nicholas is always a resource for you, available to answer your questions. So thanks very much. So before we move on to the next session, I just noticed I'm looking in the chat and things, and I think that I've missed out another newbie. Julie, I think you mentioned that you're a newbie. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. So yeah, I'm Julie. I've started at VAC as doing a befriender volunteer. So I'm hoping to become a social prescriber. So that's what I'm working towards. But yeah, really enjoying doing my volunteer work at the moment.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for volunteering as well. It's brilliant.
Kevin, can I just say I need to kind of jump out of the meeting now. I've got to go into another one, but
of course. Well, thanks very much for that.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye. Okay, great. So we're on to our substantive item of today, which is I'm going to hand over to Donna. So Donna and Ricky's going to help. So Donna, over to you.
I'm going to share my screen because I've updated that PowerPoint. So can I share? Can I screen share?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Ooh, okay. That's right at the end. Sorry. Okay. Right. So VAC have been involved in are involved in some work with North Central London emerging integrated care system, and with our sort of counterpart Council for Voluntary Services across the other 4 boroughs in North Central London, who are Enfield, Barnet, Haringey and Islington. We have put together this quite fast and furious sort of pressures on the pressures we're seeing on the sector, perhaps coming through social prescribing. So it's what people are, you know, coming through social prescribing for, and trying to look at some of the gaps. So this is very much a sort of start of a piece of work, which this just covers 2 months. So it's very current. And the idea would be to carry on looking to see how changes are happening, where the pressures are, etc. And the purpose, so this comes from our Care Navigation Social Prescribing Service, which we are subcontracted by Age UK Camden to work on. We provide the sort of community connecting bit, community links, and the sort of front door to the service. So the service deals with people with very long-term health conditions, complex health needs at the Age UK Camden end of it. And our end of it, we connect people up with voluntary and community sector organisations predominantly, and those are people who don't necessarily have complex health needs. We pass them on to the care navigators when there's a clinical sort of component there. And so the purpose of this is really to keep an eye on what's happening there. But from our perspective as a voluntary sector infrastructure organisation, we are also obviously very concerned about the level of resources that are put into the sector to deal with what is coming through social prescribing. So we're very much on the case about resourcing, and this is part of some work that will go towards getting that kind of commitment from the NHS. So why aren't I, oh no, okay. So in terms of what's actually happening, so the North Central London emerging integrated care system, there we're working directly with the personalised care lead, the social prescribing lead, and I think it's the assistant director of commissioning. So, you know, we're talking to the people who are looking at resources. On the sort of broader scale across the country, as we're part of a cohort of councils for voluntary services across London, but within our North Central London Borough area, we're leading on that in a programme called Thriving Communities. And that's being delivered through the National Academy of Social Prescribing and in London, London Plus. There's a Learning Together programme, which some organisations in Camden across the other boroughs are involved in with us. But this is also about looking at resources and research and evidence around, around social prescribing and enabling the sector to be able to deliver for social prescription. The other thing in that mix are NHS charities, who you're probably aware are quite wealthy now from the pandemic, and they are prioritising areas of work to support residents, usually people coming out of the hospitals they're attached to. However, one of our sort of aims is to encourage our local NHS charities to work with voluntary and community sector partners who do actually know how to deliver some of these activities and services, whereas NHS charities don't necessarily do that sort of work. So not all of them anyway. So what we've sort of done for this sort of quick sort of gap analysis idea is there are 5 sort of very broad themes that have been identified across the North Central London area, and you probably recognise them as these are areas where there are there's a lot of need coming from residents. So that's food, that's support around finance and debt management, housing and home management, mental health and self-management, self-care, and social isolation. So what we did was we looked at our social care navigation, social prescribing data, and we ranked from 1 to 5, 1 being the highest, on, you know, what our data was telling us about, you know, the need within those themes. But what we could also see is that the ranking was different for people with long-term health conditions to those without. So that's how we've sort of worked this out. Now I've divided up what the issues are in each of those headings. So first of all, housing and home management. So people, LTCs, long-term conditions, sorry about all the initials in this. So that was top of the list with the people with long-term conditions. And you can see that a lot of those things on that list are related to people who are quite bound to their houses because of their ill health. People without long-term health conditions that we generally deal with, it was 4th on our list. And a lot of that was about losing people in fear of losing their homes and very related to the debt issues, but also quite a bit of people looking to be rehoused because of things that have happened to them through the pandemic, and repairs and adaptations. Nope, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So next, mental health and self-management. We put self-management in there because a lot of the mental health stuff we deal with is people who can self-refer into some of those sort of lower level mental health services. However, we have seen things getting more complex through the pandemic, and in the last 2 months, this is sort of what the picture looks like. So people with long-term conditions, it's the second most important sort of area where referrals are coming through. And again, that's related quite a lot to care packages, and the general digital exclusion connects into this as well. You know, that it's been terrible for people who've been used to people visiting them in their home. And of course that hasn't been happening. So if they're not digitally sort of clued up, then that has been problematic for many people and added to their isolation. People without long-term conditions, this is sort of 5 on our list, but what we have seen is pre-COVID, we had much more emphasis with GPs referring people who might be in danger of developing mental health issues because they were socially isolated. So it was things about social connection we were referring for, exercise, getting out in the open, that kind of stuff, healthy eating, you know, those sorts of projects and support that would provide that. That disappeared through COVID almost, because people weren't seeing their GPs in the same way. So GPs weren't picking those things up, and people were isolated. So the prolonged isolation means those things became exacerbated into more of a problem. Then, of course, on top of that, we have bereavement and domestic violence has been quite high that have contributed to that picture. Social isolation, people with long-term conditions, this was 3rd on the list. And again, that's absolutely related to being at home because of your ill health. People without long-term conditions, well, you can see, and I'm sure lots of people recognize these things, the whole lack of social connection, but also that loss of work affects your connections with people, digital exclusion, the prolonged isolation, fear of going out, dealing with quite a bit of that, and lack of informal opportunities. Quite often people don't want a service or you know, to be a recipient of something. They want the opportunity to connect much less formally, and because we're all locked down, that's really difficult. And we've got Julie on the call, who's one of our chat and link volunteers, and one of the things that our volunteers do, sorry Julie, I'm just going to correct, that's not befriending. It's not a befriending service. The purpose of that is that we will pass on people who come through social prescribing to one of our chat and link volunteers, so they can spend longer phoning them weekly and slowly trying to encourage people to connect with things that might be by phone, and as we go out, that will be more and more important. So it's a sort of, you know, it's what the volunteers used to do in GP practices, actually, face to face. They might see people over a number of weeks and, you know, suggest different things to them and just, you know, check in and make sure they're okay. So that part of that might be actually to persuade someone to connect with a befriender. But there's a lot of reluctance to actually connect with things at the moment, and that is probably due to the digital dependency of, you know, sort of doing that. And I think the perceptions of how difficult that might be. Okay, debt and finances, this is pretty big. 3rd for us with people without long-term conditions, but there's a lot attached to benefits, but loss of income through jobs, people working in the gig economy, who even going back, if you can't go back much, your wages are so low that that's pretty appalling. And accumulated debt, I mean, it's been going on for so long. And then finally, we've got food. For us, this is the biggest thing, and that's the most difficult thing to pick up. So we do lots of organising food deliveries, but the food poverty issue, where people can't afford food, seems to be much greater in terms of people who don't have the long-term health conditions. So it's a factor with the complex needs, but not as much. That's much more focused on food delivery. So we try and unpick the food thing, and if people can afford to buy food, then organise shopping, or somebody perhaps to chaperone them, escort them to the shops if they're scared of going out. But I'm very interested to hear from food projects about how they're dealing with this, the issue of giving out food and who needs it and how you manage that, really. So just quickly, this slide then is just, we've brought together some of the gaps and challenges in the lists. And when you look at this, I mean, obviously there are some things that are systemic problems that, you know, need to be solved by political will, really, like housing supply, like the benefits and welfare system and services that are designed to keep people out. And social prescribing can't solve those problems. And those are not things that really happen in the voluntary and community sector either. We can only lobby and campaign and provide the evidence on how much need there is to change things. In terms of looking at this whole picture, we hear a lot about wraparound services. Well, I'm not so sure it's about wrapping. I always assume that just means people need more than one service. But I think what we're looking at here is there are some serious interconnections between these things: debt, finances, food, you know, housing, whatever. So, and what the Thriving Communities programme appears to have quite an interest in is this idea of collaboration, where you'd have organisations working together to solve those problems. So that's part of what the learning together part of Thriving Communities is about. But it's also, I think, food for thought across the sector, that as we're looking at collaborations and partnerships, there are some really crucial things here that, you know, just looking at debt and finances alone, without looking at perhaps food supply in the mix or something else in all this is, so how those collaborations can be built is something we're very interested in. And it's also something that I think NHS charities have a great interest in. And as the voluntary and community sector, we can build collaborations. We have a track record in doing those things. So I feel we should be kind of leading the way on that. So I'm going to finish there, and I'm really, we'll circulate this, we'll put it on our page that we sent a link out to. We're really interested to hear what any insights from that, and then we've got a quick mentee survey to see how you might rank from your experience from 1 to 5 those areas, and anything else that isn't in there that you think is really key that should be on the radar of all these different people who are looking at gaps in services and how services might need to change and develop as time goes on. So, any questions or comments?
And so we're going to share the Menti now, is that right? So Ricky, do you want to put the link in the chat, and then you need a code, and
put it in the chat now. So it's menti.com, and then just enter that code.
Ricky, does it let you, it doesn't let you specify if you put other, does it?
No, so if you have something for other, if you type that in the chat and what you would rank it as.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on the chat. So yeah, that's sorry about that. That's the, didn't quite realize the tool was that limited.
I mean, I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Could you say a bit more about this Thriving Communities work that you're doing?
Yeah. So the National Academy of Social Prescribing has been sort of set up really by, well, you know, the usual kind of quango-y suspects.
NHS.
the NHS, including the NHS. But, and it's, you know, supposed to be the voice of sort of social prescribing. And it's really the Thriving Communities programme is its kind of backbone bit of work, really, and that is about working with the voluntary and community sector. The first few months, I would say, have been quite a challenge because they have a very top-down view. We're used to working in Camden and even across North Central London, where the attitude to the voluntary community sector is a bit different from what we've experienced when we step outside that world. And I think, so there's a lot of influencing to do with them around the way they perceive the sector and how social prescribing works. So they look nationally and they look at big national organisations, and the challenge there is social prescribing takes place at a like micro local level. You know, it's the support that's available around a GP practice. It doesn't even work across an area like the integrated care system across 5 boroughs. So that is quite challenging. So there's that side of it where we're trying to work with them to improve that sort of working together around social prescribing, and so that it doesn't become too much of a medical model. It's been happening in the voluntary sector forever. So that's the whole learning, collaboration, that kind of side of it. The other things they're doing, we have a group that people, it was in our newsletter for quite a few weeks, where people have joined up across NCL to basically, look at challenges within this sort of world. So we've just started working with that group, and they're organisations, groups from across North Central London. Not many of them, it's a small group. It's sort of like an action learning set, but not. So that, and then the sort of bigger picture stuff is the sort of trying to work with the NHS charities. Kevin's made quite a lot of contact with them, and our NHS counterparts in colleagues at North Central London are helping with that too. And so there's that work, and what we want to do, as I said before, is encourage partnership with the existing voluntary and community sectors who know the local area, rather than just, having these huge charities delivering stuff. Then they've got a strand of research which is working with academic institutions on developing evidence, I think, around the blockages to social prescribing. So things like GPs who won't get involved, that kind of stuff. That seems to be the thing at the moment. And the other thing is about money, which is we're all very interested in. The NHS actually resourcing this huge thing in their business plan. So they are looking at investment funding at integrated care system level. So that will hopefully result in a fund where they would expect match funding and developing. I think there's been one set up at London level to test it out. And if anyone had come to one of our social prescribing learning networks on this, we did an event on this with the Healthy London Partnership, and people thrashed out the idea of, how you could fund social prescription, the providers and the support that's out there, because it's very complicated and very diverse. And if you have a person-centered service, you need a great variety of stuff. And so what came out of that session, that event that we did, was that local investment funds that gave grants basically would probably be the most logical way forward. So that, I think, is what they're looking at, but integrated care system level. So there potentially will be a North Central London fund where they'd put in, I think they were talking about £500,000 as the starting pot, and then expect contributions from business. There are big links between social prescribing and keeping people in employment, so hence saving employers money. So they're using all that kind of research that's already been done. to make that case. So who knows, but we'll keep you informed. I mean, it's a very confusing programme, to be honest, at the moment.
Thank you.
Hi, Donna. I just did your Menti, and it's interesting because other is what came up first. Although what we're doing is we always, we say we provide food as a vehicle for support.
Yeah.
So much the food, it's the other, and other was actually first. It's lack of local employment opportunities.
Right.
That's that has come first, and then you've got obviously debt, but the debt wouldn't be there if people were able to go back into work.
Yes, quite. Yeah. Yeah, I think the yeah,
Food actually came fourth on the list for us.
Say again, someone had fourth?
Food actually came fourth.
Food was fourth, right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So has everyone managed to get into Menti? Ricky, I don't know if you're able to share the results.
Yeah.
See what people have
Second.
done. By the way, I've just put a quick link to a quick overview of thriving communities, Sharon, but it's big and complicated, and yeah. Aha.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Right. Oh, interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, social isolation outward. Yes, I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised to see food is at the bottom of that. The need for food. So that might mean things are improving.
But picking up on Farah's point, so other is definitely there. And what we need to do, particularly if you put other, is please just drop that into the chat, because this, oh, just swapped place. It's now up to 30.
Yes. Tell us in the chat what other is, because we can, this is sort of ongoing. We'll keep adding things to the mix, and the connections between things, I think, are quite are very useful. Farah, can I ask you about, from what I understood a little while back when I spoke to you, you were doing some work around managing the food provision in relation to what people needed to save to pay off debt, was it?
Say that again, please.
I seem to remember having a conversation with you where you were talking about providing food to for some people to a degree that they could save a bit of money to pay off debts that they'd accumulated.
So every parcel that we provide saves a household £30 to £40. Although a lot of our volunteers say they reckon it's more, but we like to be conservative on that estimate. So we say £30 to £40 per household. So if you've got water debt, or you've got electricity debt, or on the card or on the direct debit, it does that helps them to pay off their debt. So just a comment you made just before, you said you're pleased to see it, it looks like it's getting better. I'd say it's the opposite, it's getting worse.
Right.
So food is further down that list, because the need for access to food isn't going away. We're up to 85 families now, so 325, and we've just asked another local school to send. We've got space for another 10 families to come our way, which they've said they're going to take that up. So the need for food isn't going away, but it's going to continue to be there whilst all these other themes are around. And I am concerned too about the lack of the word wraparound that I find is starting to enter the Camden vocabulary in the last month, I'm finding that word coming from everywhere, and I'm concerned about what that means, how Camden is planning to continue the support, because as the lockdown is easing, in fact, the problem's not going away. People are going to be back on to the roads, but with regards to our beneficiaries, it's just going to go back to before, prior to the pandemic. Oh, it's there. Food poverty is there. I don't know if that makes sense, but these people are still going to struggle, and they're going to become invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we've been working a lot now is on finding those local employment opportunities, and we're hoping to grow that. It's not many, but we've managed to get 3, without the capacity, 3 households into employment very, very locally. So that's one of the areas we're going to be focusing our attention. I have found that the local employees we've spoken to, that we've met by being on the Regent's Place estate, for example, something that's become valuable for them is staff that are local, that can walk to them, that don't have to take transport. So we're trying to tap into that now.
I think it's interesting, the connecting up of the services, because from a social prescribing perspective, actually, you know, you can end up, when everything's absolutely singular, you can end up referring people to 10 different things, which sometimes makes no sense at all. I think this is one of the things that is being sort of grappled with, really, about where you can make, and it's not wraparound, it's actually interconnectedness. So it's either collaborations or service or support that is provided across a range of things, that you know, that you're looking at these things in relation to one another, not in isolation.
So we've just got a couple of minutes. I'm picking up a couple of things in the chat. So in terms of other, Sharon has also put it's about unemployment, and then Collins is about saying it's more than social isolation. It's about outright social exclusion.
Yeah,
so that's really useful. So if others have put other, then yeah, please put it in the chat so that we can capture it. And if there's, I think, Ricky, if you want to stop sharing the screen now, and we'll go back to seeing everyone. We've just got a minute or 2 left. I don't know if there's anyone who wants to add anything to that. Certainly, if something occurs to you after the meeting, then by all means, drop Donna a line, because we will gather the feedback from the chat, but anything else you have to say is useful as well here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, an interesting point actually, Colin, on the just outright social exclusion. When people come through a social prescribing referral, we might never know that as a component of the social isolation thing, because people just don't, it's like people don't sort of come through and say, I'm lonely. You know, it's just one of those things that people don't necessarily reveal. So they're feeling that. So.
Okay, so it's noon. I'm going to draw this to a close. Thank you so much for coming and participating. It's really great to see you all. And I'm going to float an idea for the next one. The next one is due on the 21st of April, but in fact it's the VAC AGM on the 20th. So I'm going to float the idea that we sort of combine the two, that the forum, you come along to the AGM, saves coming to 2 meetings. Hopefully it will be as interesting, if not more so. If you don't like that idea and you'd rather have a forum and you've got an idea for a forum topic, then please do drop me a line, and we'll love to hear from you. Okay, so I'm going to draw things to a close. Thanks so much, and have a great day.